Okay, it's finally here. Playoffs rocking and rolling with my man Stuckey, who went 37, 27, and 1, 57%, which isn't it true that if you are a successful gambler, it's like 53%? So you're well above that line, baby. What's up, bro?
Brock Bowers, though. Did you get him the Brock Bowers party on Monday night?
Hell
That was
yeah.
fun.
Hell yeah. Brock Bowers, man. TCU strong effort by the Horned Frogs.
Yeah, the game. All you need to know is that the total was in the 60s and it went over with one team scoring once. So yeah, hopefully, I assume that we're going to get a lot more competitive games in the NFL playoffs, which I'm looking forward to. Although it's, I know we're going to go through the games here. It's a weird weekend with like just the quarterbacks, some of the quarterbacks that we're going to see. It's definitely going to be some strange games.
I'm not trying to be a downer because it is next week's better, but this week is still pretty sweet. Not a great weekend. It's not one of those you just look at the slate and go, gee, I can't wait to just sit around for, back-to-back days and watch football. There are definitely better regular season weekends than this week, but again, not going to complain. So let's just start with the 1:30 kickoff, which I guess the moment the Packers got eliminated and it became Seattle, I would imagine the Niners and the Packers would have been a night game and they would have flip-flopped the Chargers and Jacksonville, but we're getting Seattle. Now, when it was early on this week, it was 10, kind of like Miami game. It was much higher. There is I don't know if it's called a bomb cyclone or some crazy shit's happened in Northern California. A ton of rain, supposed to rain like over half an inch, winds and cold. This is not your typical, mid-January day in Santa Clara. So I would love the Niners in a nice weather, dome, whatever, to destroy Seattle. They kind of have both times. The second game, the score was closer than the actual game. But to me, 9.5, when you're factoring in, I mean, this could just be a mush fest. And we know just in the sport of football, it gets weird. So if it's really going to rain like it's supposed to, and it has been, I think you would have to take Seattle on the points.
Yeah, I mean, this game, I don't really love this game, but if you're right, if it was 10, I would take Seattle. The bet that I'm looking at for this game is probably the under, especially when you factor in the weather. I mean, San Francisco's defense has just been nails all year. I mean, it's hard for me to see with these conditions, Seattle's offense really having much success. And then when you throw in the fact that, look, it's scary because Seattle's run D has been awful all year, and San Francisco is one of the best rushing teams in the NFL. They could just run downhill on them, and if they get a lead, they could keep doing it. But if the conditions are bad, and it's Purdy's first playoff start, and historically quarterbacks, no matter who they are, you can go Mahomes, Allen, whoever, they're quarterbacks making their first playoff start have historically struggled. So, I could see that, with this weather, Seattle is just going to load up the box. And then you're going to have Shanahan also as a favorite. He gets a lead with this weather with a young quarterback. He's going to start to play conservative. He knows he can win on his defense. So I could see this game and, final being like 23-13 and then being right on the number.
Exactly.
If it gets to 10, I'd look at Seattle. But, historically, Shanahan hasn't been great as a big favorite because he'll be conservative. When he knows he can win, it's like 4th and 1 at the 10. Even though he knows he could probably run it, he's going to kick a field goal. And that might cost you the cover, even though it probably might increase his win probability at the end of the game. So, yeah, under maybe Seattle if it gets to 10. That weather just pushes me over the top on looking at the under because I could trust the San Fran defense. And then knowing how Shanahan might play this, I think it's under or nothing.
Yeah, especially if it's raining. He's been more inclined with Purdy at like the end of halves where he would just kind of play out the string and go to halftime, up a field goal or up 7 points to push the envelope, and they would drive and they would score more points in a rain situation. If the score was like 10-3, instead of trying to get it to 17-3 or 13-3, he'd be like, shit, just run it out. Like, I think you're right. He is, for a 43-year-old, he's an old soul. I mean, he would have belonged in the 70s as a coach.
And it might actually be the right approach
for sure.
Here. Maybe not later in the playoffs. But if you're saying, look, our defense can win this game, we're playing an inferior opponent. Let's let the kid get his, feet wet and in a playoff atmosphere. So let's just, let's be conservative. But you're right. Yeah, he's definitely an old soul.
Geno's first playoff start as well, right? I know he's a lot older and been around
Yep.
a little longer, but he's getting his first go around. Now they got nothing to lose, right? I mean, Seattle, not a soul thought they would be here, but that's not the way teams think. And another team that I guess some people thought they would be here, kind of a trendy pick when the season started to potentially make the playoffs. Probably more people picked them as a wild card than win the division, but they're here. I just think under no circumstances can the Chargers lose this game. Now, I wouldn't feel great betting on Brandon Staley in a big spot. As we saw last weekend, that fucking place rocks. That place is going to be loud, but I don't know. I would just have a hard time. Yeah, I didn't think Trevor Lawrence played that great last weekend. Obviously missed some huge throws. And there were just even some basic plays where you're like, God, he just looks a little off. Now they do. I don't know. To me, the Jacksonville Jags are probably a year away from like really taking them seriously. I like the Chargers in this spot, but I would have a hard time just placing money on Brandon Staley, though that to me is the pick.
Yeah, I don't like laying any points with the Chargers. I actually moneyline the Chargers, and if you want to, moneyline parlay them with like the Bills, who I will get to, I don't think they have any chance of losing. Could the Chargers just play weird games? Like they're going to win this game by like 1 or 2, which I could easily see. But yeah, I mean, what this game boils down to me is I trust Herbert a little more than Lawrence right now. And you're right, Jacksonville at home, they do have the head coaching advantage. Although there's still some coverages that Trevor Lawrence struggles with, and the Chargers' defensive staff, and that's where Staley still is good with his defensive mind. I think that they're going to have a really good game plan there. You got Bosa back, and their defense has been trending in the right direction. But what I think this boils down to, though, is the weakest unit in this game by far is the Jags secondary, and they've gotten away with it all year. They still, they're 31st against the short pass, which is bad when you play the Chargers because they're too conservative when Lombardi and company, but a lot of short passes. So that's going to hurt them here. And their secondary faced the easiest schedule of opposing quarterbacks of any team in the NFL this year. Just look at their division.
I know, it's a joke.
You played the Colts twice, the Texans twice. You clinched the division by playing Josh Dobbs in the final regular season. Then they played some other passing offenses that had quarterbacks hurt, wide receivers hurt, like the first time they played the Chargers. So I think that's what this boils down to, is I actually trust Herbert a little more right now. And then I trust the Chargers secondary a lot more than this Jacksonville secondary, which just hasn't been tested all year for the most part. And I think that's the difference. So I think Chargers win the game. I'm not even comfortable like 2.5. I moneyline them. If you want to parlay it with the Bills, I think that's fine too. You get some plus money.
If you tell me that when the dust settles on like Sunday night, this is the most entertaining game of the weekend, just because it gets weird, like I would be very prepared for that.
Absolutely. Yeah. Then high weird factor here.
Starting Sunday morning, I got a fun fact for you. You probably know because you're a big college football guy. Skylar Thompson was drafted 15 spots ahead of Brock Purdy. And honestly, I didn't even realize I didn't watch much Kansas State football last year, but it looks like those two guys are playing completely different sports. I would say if they could have a do-over on that one, they would take Brock Purdy over Skylar Thompson and pick 247. But I watched a lot of that game last weekend. I think he's terrible. I mean, he looks completely, overwhelmed, as he should. You look at his stats at Kansas State, it's not like the guy was lighting people up. The Dolphins obviously officially have a Tua problem. I would imagine this offseason they're not going to pick up his fifth-year option, but that's a whole nother story. I just don't see how Buffalo doesn't just destroy these guys. I mean, they are hanging on for dear life with their quarterback situation.
Yeah, and then I think Tyler.
It's a lot of points. I mean, I looked this morning; it was 13 points. But if you tell me this game is 40-10 or something, I could see it.
Yeah, the only thing that would scare me is, maybe I haven't bet this game yet. I took some Bills money line with the Chargers money line just in the parlay, but I would lean Bills. I mean, this line got to 9 with rumors that Tua might play, which I don't know where they came from. I didn't think that he would play, and then it came out Tua was ruled out, and it went right up to 13, which might not still be enough. And for what it's worth, over the past 20 years, double-digit underdogs in the wild card round are 1-8 against the spread. I would think that might have been reversed, but a lot of times just in this round, if the spread is that high, it's probably that high for a reason. It's not like there's the 1 seed with a bye. And yeah, the Dolphins are in trouble. The only hope that they have is, Allen could sometimes be sloppy. they got to run the ball and get a turnover early. Like if they have to play from behind at any point, and I don't see how their defense can slow down the Bills. Like this just gets out of hand more and more. And then if you bet the Dolphins, you're hoping that they're like down 20 and the Bills say, look, we might have to play the Bengals and then the Chiefs. Let's chill. Let's not get any injuries here. And then you're rooting for a back door. So yeah, this is Bills or nothing. It's really unfortunate that we got this game because it's just, we've seen this and then you're getting the third string quarterback.
I know.
It's basically like a bye for the Bills. So
I said earlier in the week, I mean, we just got the wrong two teams in the 7 seed. Obviously, the 7 seeds, I just think moving forward are going to be very hit or miss. But the Lions and the Steelers would have at least, to me, given potentially 2 games. And the points.
Yeah, the Steelers at least have a D that can like, all right, let's make things happen and ugly up this game. The Dolphins defense is just not like, they're not going to be able to match up here. And then you're going to be playing from behind and it's just a mess. And yeah, Steelers and like this would be a Tomlin spot. We could talk about taking the points with the Steelers, and but unfortunately,
what were the odds you got in the Bills Chargers money line parlay? 1-1.
Yeah, it was like plus 102, like right around even money.
Might dabble in that. I kind of like that.
So yeah, instead of taking like minus 145, I'm extremely confident that the Bills are going to win the game outright. So you're basically taking it to a little plus money, or basically even money that the Chargers will win the game. And then you got a little action on the Bills game too, just for fun.
Exactly. Okay, Giants at Minnesota. My logic is going to be pretty simple on this one. Every single person is going to, I think, when you wake up on Sunday morning, all the shows, gamblers, I think people are going to take the Giants. So I'll take Minnesota. I don't like Minnesota. They are paper tigers. They're statistically, their point differential. It's crazy how they ended up where they ended up. Obviously, they won a lot of those one-score games. Hell, they could have easily lost to the Giants. What was that, on Christmas Day or Christmas Eve? But I'm just going to take Minnesota because I think every person and their mother is going to take the Giants +3 in the spot.
Yeah, I mean, the Vikings really got outplayed. They gave up 450 yards to the Giants in that game and really should have lost. I don't blame you for doing that. I personally I teased the Giants to 9, and then I teased them with the Bucks on Monday night up to 8.5. Anytime you can tease through 3, 6, 7 in the NFL, it's a pretty good wager. And look, the Vikings, they win games by 1 possession. The Giants lose or win games by 1 possession. So there's a high likelihood that this game finishes Vikings by 3 to 7. So I was comfortable teasing the Giants up. But you're right. I mean, this line, if you think about it, and the Giants, you could argue, should have won. But this line closed Vikings -4.5 at home just a few weeks ago. And now you're laying 3. And there's a high probability that this game ends 3 with the way these two teams play. And then you push, but they could win by 4 or 7. So yeah, I think that there might be a little value in the Vikings, and I do think that everyone's going to bet the Giants here. Everyone is saying the Vikings are terrible. They only win by 1 possession, but beating the Giants by 1 possession doesn't even make you that great anyway. So yeah, I think really high likelihood this game ends Vikings by 3 to 7, and then they go to next week. They're probably whoever wins this game is out.
I completely agree. I mean, the one thing Minnesota, that place, I mean, it's an excellent home field crowd they've always had, in the dome. I think that place is going to be bananas. I mean, that skull chant loud. It's a pretty easy landing spot for, first game for Cousins. I mean, the Giants, Dayball's done an incredible job, but man for man, they're just not that talented. And to me, their issue, and this is going to be an issue if Minnesota wins this game and they play the Niners, assuming that the weather is much more normal in a week and it's supposed to be, is their DBs, especially their corners. They just don't have good corner play. Well, what are the Giants going to do? I mean, like Plaxico Burress ain't walking through that door. So it's like now the Niners next week with Ayuk and Debo and Juwan Jennings and Kittle, like that becomes a major, major problem. But in this matchup, like, I mean, what do the Giants want to do? Really ugly up the game. They're going to try to win it like 17-13. And we're Minnesota. If they can score points, like it's going to be hard for the Giants to hang with them.
Yeah, and Vikings offensive line is not playing well. They haven't been able to run the ball the second half of the year, so they'd be in deep trouble against the Niners. And a stat that'll work in your favor here for the Vikings, and this speaks to what I was talking about before with first-time playoff quarterbacks. There's a lot of jitters, but first-time playoff quarterbacks versus quarterbacks who have a start. So in this case, you have Daniel Jones making his first start against Cousins, who has playoff experience. Over the past 20 years, those first-time starting playoff quarterbacks have gone 16-34 straight up, 14-35-1 against the spread. That's 28%. First-time quarterbacks versus not 28% sample size of 50 games. That would apply to Daniel Jones here making his first start. It also would apply to the game we just talked about with Skylar Thompson taking on Josh Allen. Does not apply to the Jags-Chargers game and does not apply to the Niners game because you have two quarterbacks that are making their first-time starts.
One thing to me that's also interesting about the Giants do upset Minnesota. I mean, what a win for Philly, because then the Niners just play the winner of the next game. The Eagles get to play the Giants. I mean, that is a huge advantage. So to me, this game, it's a fascinating just kind of how the NFC playoffs kind of shape out. Because obviously if Minnesota wins this game, assuming Dallas wins, that I think we got a pretty sweet Final Four in the NFC, for those. I mean, I think the Niners would beat Minnesota, but that Eagle-Cowboy game would be, you better believe that thing's going to be on like Sunday Night Football, and that'll be fun. Let's speak of your team, the Ravens, who got some weird shit going on, and it all starts with the quarterback. It's still unknown. I don't totally blame Lamar. Like, am I going to lay it all on the line when I don't have a contract? Though this all gets back to earlier in the season. I mean, they offered him $170 million, and he said no. We'll see how that plays out. And ultimately, there's even some buzz like, could he not be on the team next year? If he plays in this game, I mean, I don't know. I haven't read anywhere that people bullish thinking the guy's going to play in this game. I would say the line doesn't necessarily reflect that, right? I mean, is that
line would be a field goal if he's playing and he was fully healthy. I mean, the Ravens were favored by 4 points, 3.5, I think it closed at home when they beat the Bengals earlier this year. And the Ravens defense is much better now. So this would be the Bengals have played better.
This is a Huntley line.
Yeah, this is Huntley line. If it was now last week, it was Anthony Brown. The line was 11, and the Ravens probably should have covered that game. They gave away 21 points in turnovers. And they didn't play Mark Andrews. They didn't play Marcus Peters. They didn't play their starting left guard. They didn't play half their team. And they started Anthony Brown. And that line closed at 11.5. So now you're sitting at 8.5. I think, and look, this will be Huntley's first playoff game, so that the trend fits against Burrow. But I think this is a rare exception where I'm willing to take the dog. This is a high likelihood here. Bengals win this game by a field goal. And this is like to me, number one, the home field is not big here. It's a divisional game, so there's a lot of familiarity. They were just there last week, and the Ravens don't need a quarterback. It really doesn't. Like over the past 8 weeks, they don't have a quarterback. They don't have a passing game, so you're not going to go out and ask Huntley, who can't really throw it downfield, to do much here. If you need Huntley to throw to keep you in this game against Burrow, you're done. You're cooked. It's not going to matter. So, but the Ravens defense, since they signed Roquan Smith or traded for him, but arguably the best in the AFC. Their special teams are still the best in the AFC, and their coaching staff is still one of the best in the AFC. This is, John Harbaugh is 5-0 straight up and against the spread on the road in the wild card round. Never lost. He's done this so many times. He's done it against Brady. The most recent times against the Titans a couple years ago. Been there, done that, knows how to prepare this team. And the defense and special teams in a divisional game, it's going to be, Bengals are saying the Ravens were playing dirty last week. This is just going to be an old-fashioned, I think, AFC North game. And the Ravens have the defense that can at least slow down Cincy. And I think the one thing that people aren't talking about enough, and it probably not going to cost the Bengals this game, but the Bengals are now down 2 starting offensive linemen. Lost Lyle Collins, and then last week they lost Alex Kappa, their starting guard, who's one of their best offensive linemen. And after he went out last week, the Ravens were getting tons of pressure on Burrow, and they weren't even playing their full complement of starters on defense. You saw it after Collins went down against the Patriots in that second half. Patriots are getting a ton of pressure. So I'm curious to see how that plays out. But missing 2 now offensive linemen, both on the right side, against this Ravens defense that's playing really well. They won't be afraid of going in here. Special teams, coaching, defense, I think keeps this within 1 possession. I like the Ravens at 8.5, 9. Dead range now. You can see if it gets to 10. But I think Dobbins, a lot of Dobbins here, a lot of punting, field goals, and then this stays within 1 possession. I think this game will be close, even though a lot of people don't think it will be.
Well, and this is their first time, right? Because last year, I guess they played the Raiders in the first round. They were favored, but it was nowhere near like 8.5 points. And then the rest of the playoffs, the Titans, obviously the Chiefs and the Rams, like they were the underdog. And now they're getting treated like they are the 49ers, like they are the Chiefs. And like you said, they are now, I mean, a little undermanned, assuming Lamar doesn't play, but a franchise and a head coach and an operation that, one, is not going to be intimidated because they have a lot of, I mean, they're in the division, but two, I mean, they are just kind of one of the sexy picks to potentially make the Super Bowl. It's a different pressure coming at you for Burrow and the boys.
Yeah. I mean, last year that Raiders game, Carr hits a helmet at the end. They're driving then they beat the Titans by 2. And then they had that crazy comeback against the Chiefs. It was a pretty
well, remember Derek spiked the ball on first down like the 10-yard line, just gave up a play.
Unbelievable. So yeah, I mean, I think that the Bengals are they're gonna be a problem in the AFC here, but this line is a little too out of hand. I've seen the Ravens go on the road and cover this number. I mean, my whole life ever since Harbaugh has got there. I mean, I remember going up to New England countless times against Brady. They would always be +7. Never be afraid. It would be Flacco against Brady, and the game would end 20-17. I think that's what we're in for here.
Well, speaking of Brady, I don't think there's any franchise, any especially individual coach that includes Brandon Staley that has more pressure this weekend, or I mean, it was Monday night, than McCarthy. I mean, the pressure on the Cowboys to win this game is just massive. Obviously, the line reflects that they're favored on the road in the wild card round. I would imagine once that doesn't happen, I mean, it doesn't happen that often, right? Beside not accounting like a quarterback injury or anything. I don't think Tampa's any good at all. Now they got Tom, and he's actually obviously made some plays down the stretch, throwing a lot more touchdowns. Him and Mike Evans got on the same page, but I don't know. I no way I could pick Tampa in this spot, but it's hard for me to trust the Cowboys because I watched last year at home against the Niners, and the Niners came in there and just hit them fucking right in the mouth. So this is a massive, massive game. And honestly, the next week, Dallas, I mean, if they win this game to play the Eagles, it's not like their fans and people would be like, well, Dallas is used to playing the Philly. It's not like they're going to be some huge underdog in that game, especially I saw Jalen Hurts just said he's not acting like he's fully healthy. I mean, he's banged up. So you're getting the advantage. Your quarterback's healthy. Their quarterback isn't. And Dak Prescott, I say it all the time, like one of the reasons he throws a lot of interceptions is he does not have a strong arm. So a little bit like an Alex Smith or whatever, if he's a little inaccurate, it's a very catchable ball. Like when Josh Allen and some of these guys are throwing these 100-mile-an-hour fastballs, the guys play defense for a reason. They don't have the greatest hands, but they're still NFL players. Like Dak does throw a ball that your average linebacker can pick. And to me, that's what would make me nervous in this game because Todd Bowles is a good defensive coordinator. He can throw some stuff at you, and all of a sudden Dak, it's a tie game because he's got a couple picks, headed in the fourth quarter. Like that is a foreseeable possibility.
Yeah, it's a really interesting game. And Dallas, obviously, I mean, they're pretty much limping into the play after last week against Washington, just getting destroyed. Their pass offense isn't playing that well. And yet Dak, with his turnovers, he's especially struggling against man coverage. And that speaks to a lot of what you just said. If the ball is a little catchable and the timing is just a little off. And I expect Tampa to run a lot of man here. I mean, you would probably be getting 3.5 if Dallas didn't just get clobbered last week. And I said before, I teased the Giants just to get them 9 with the Bucs at +8.5. I think this will end up being a close game. What might end up doing it though, if it's not turnovers, because Brady, over the historically in the since the beginning of time in the NFL, Brady doesn't turn the ball over. You can rely on that, and that could end up being the difference here in a road playoff game. But the difference might end up being this Dallas secondary is not playing well, not fully healthy. They lost one of their corners to an injury. But the Tampa Bay defense hasn't been healthy all year. You talk about Vita Vea and Hakeem Hicks. When they've been both in the lineup together, this is a team that's 6-1. Their one loss came in overtime against the Browns when there was a Hail Mary late. And they're only allowing 3.7 yards per carry. Without them, and 15 points per game. Without them, 4.8 yards per carry, 25 points per game. Throw on top of that their secondary, which has dealt with a lot of injuries, specifically Antoine Winfield and their corners. Now they're coming in here pretty healthy. And this is a defense that in week 1 went, beat Dallas 19-3, completely shut down that Dallas offense. And if you could stop the Dallas running game right now, which they can when they're at full strength. It's a very good run defense. Then you can slow down this passing attack, and Dak, who's really struggling, he's just not seeing things. So that might end up being the difference. I'm going to say Tampa wins this game, and but I feel more, if it was 3, I would take them. I feel more comfortable just teasing it up through 8.5. Lines are pretty efficient this time of the year. If they do win, and I don't think Tampa's any good either. And one of the key things to watch here is their center, who hasn't played all year, Brian Jensen, who's awesome. And I don't know how, if he'll be limited. He might play. I don't know. He hasn't played a single snap in the regular season. He came off IR, but his backup's also banged up. So if he can't go, then the backup can't go. Then against the Dallas pressure and Brady, if you can pressure him up the middle, then things get dicey. So that's something to watch here. But if Tampa can win this game, I think that they're cooked against the Niners pressure. But if the Vikings win and say, and this is what I would want as a Niners fan, Vikings go to the Niners, Brady playing that Eagles team who runs nothing but zone, which you never want to do against Brady, just letting them short pass it. I mean, that's what happened last year when these two teams played. I would not want that. I was an Eagles fan. I would want that if I was a Niners fan. I don't think it matters. I think that they're advancing next week anyway. But things could get a little dicey for the Eagles. The difference between playing Tampa and the Giants, big difference.
If you think everyone's had enough of Tom already, imagine he just starts knocking off the Cowboys and the Eagles.
Yeah,
and people lose their mind. But
man.
I think you spoke with the two big guys inside. The stats on Dak over the years are pretty cut and dry, right? When he has to throw, when they have to lean on him to go Mahomes and Josh Allen, and he gets the 35 to 45 plus attempts, that's when they get in trouble. Because
if their run game's cooking and he's play action, that's when he's at its best, and the Dallas offense is at its best. But if you can't get the run game going and you're asking them to drop back and win you games, you're right. That's when they get in trouble.
Well, if Cowboys lose this game, I know Jerry's been loyal in the past, but there would be a fury of anger from Cowboy fans to get rid of
Sean Payton time.
Could you see Sean and Jerry getting along? I don't know.
Probably not.
Two big egos.
Yeah.
Two big egos. Jerry doesn't like paying Roger $45 million. Sean's going to want about 30. So it'll be interesting how that one works.
Yeah. Yeah, I've seen David Shaw to the Broncos. I do not agree with that one. I mean, David Shaw is he was a good coach for what he was, but he's a kind of a dinosaur for the NFL right now.
That's a Condi Rice, a little taking care of her guy. She's part of the Broncos. Yeah, I don't know if anyone's watched Stanford. I don't know, the last 3 or 4 years they've been fucking terrible.
Yeah. Brutal.
Well, Stuckey.
But yeah, I like. By the way, I like your. If I had to pick the Super Bowl right now, I'm gonna go Niners-Bills.
I'm with you. With Jalen being banged up, I mean, the Eagles just aren't the same. It's just period, point blank, end of story. When he was humming, they were awesome. When he's not, I mean, they're just. I don't want to say they're mortal. They're still really talented, but they're nowhere what they were. And to me, the Bills, and you and I have been talking about it, are just such a great dome team. And the advantage now that this thing's going to be in Atlanta or whatever was announced is such an advantage. If I was the Chiefs, I'd rather can we just play in Buffalo? I'd rather just play outside.
Seriously,
I don't want to play you inside. I mean, their wide receivers, we're not as fast anymore, and they're faster.
Yeah, the Chiefs aren't living on explosive downfield passes anymore.
That screws the Chiefs.
Enormous. I agree.
But that's where we're at, and obviously they got to win to get there. But I think we'd all be a little stunned if it doesn't end up Bills Chiefs. Bengals fans are like, what about us? Yeah, guys, we'll see. Okay, Stuckey, have a good weekend, bro.
Absolutely. Good luck with all your wagers. Enjoy the games.